Hi, everyone. Welcome to what is going to be kind of a quick tour of some different ways to access scholarly information, scientific literature, academic articles using the Shoreline Community College Library. And we're going to look at some library databases. But to get started, I want to just make sure everybody knows how to get to the library website. So here from our homepage, right, shoreline.edu, a quick way, you can go to current students and right down here to this library tab. And this gets us to the library homepage, which you can see also has a lot of different resources available to us. You can rent a laptop for the quarter. You can reserve study rooms. You can set up tutoring for yourself at the Student Learning Center. You can also, down here, we have some really helpful links to reach out to librarians for help. We'd love to be able to participate in your research as you work on it. But we're focused on databases, which is where we're going to find most of the kinds of scholarly journals and articles that we want to include in our search for scientific research. We could, for example, search the whole library. Let's see. Use these keywords. And this is searching our entire catalog, but it's giving us 199,000 plus results, right? And it's including all of these different kinds of sources. So it's cool to see how much the library has access to. But, for example, we've got books in here, we have newspaper articles, we have dissertations. So a lot of information that might not necessarily be the best resources for us to use for this particular assignment or in the kind of research that we're just doing for this class. So I think databases are the best place for us to start for right now. And we can also access them in a couple of different tabs over here. But sorry, let's click on this icon right here. And this is going to get us to our database homepage. So just alphabetically listed A to Z, you can see we subscribe to 111 databases, which is still a lot, right? Still a lot of information. And you can see some of it like we've got, all data, which is specific to our automotive students and research, APA psych articles, which is obviously going to be about psychology, so you can see that databases kind of sometimes can have specific content for specific sorts of disciplines and subjects. And that's why I recommend searching using the subjects tab. It's also useful to note that you can identify what type of media or content you're interested in. So like data and statistics or photographs, streaming video, stuff like that. But I think by sorting by subjects is going to get us to, I think, a broad enough but also specific starting point. You can see we have subjects for basically every kind of class at Shoreline and beyond. And sometimes your research might not just be part of an obvious one subject. For example, you might have a lot of a more interdisciplinary topic or something that overlaps with a lot of different areas. So we're going to click on two. We're going to go for biology and chemistry here. And that might just help us see what's out there. So we're going to search based on those two subject filters. And now we're down to 18 databases, which is pretty helpful, right? And you can also see we've set up best bets. So these are kind of like the recommended starting points for these particular subjects. And you can see there's still several to choose from. And they might be more or less, sort of broad, like PubChem, for example, is going to be, focusing on chemistry. We have psychology down here again. This little unlocked lock indicates that this is an open access resource, which means that everything in there is free for everyone to read online, which is wonderful. We always want to be moving towards more open access for our information. And really quick, let's look at PubChem just to kind of see what the different interfaces for some of these search directories might look like. And for PubChem, not only does it have, articles and experiments and literature, it has a lot of different tools, right? You can look at patents, you can check in on, if you need to look at the periodic table real quick. So it's giving you more than just literature, but some tools as well. But I think for our search, we're going to start up at the top here with Academic Search Complete. And like the name sounds, this is an interdisciplinary database, so it has lots of different subjects that it, has subscribes to in terms of the different journals and publications and periodicals that live in this database. But it's broad enough that it's also going to have a lot of biology and a lot of chemistry. And we can see here that the automatic interface we get to start searching, we're in advanced search right now. For example, if you wanted to see basic search, this is kind of more what you're used to seeing with like a Google search or in your browser, where you're just putting all of the words that you need in on one line. But what advanced search allows us to do is add in way more filters and also start to kind of layer the different keywords that we're looking at to get even more specific results about the relationships between those different words as they exist in our topic. I also want to point out maybe the best place to start for all your searches um, is going over to full text. And that just means that to the best of, academic search complete's ability, it's only going to give us results in which we have access for free to the full text of the article. And that might sound obvious, but there's a lot of, journals and different databases that really only publish abstracts. And then, people can decide whether they want to read the article after they've read the abstract. But we want to make sure we have access to all of what we're seeing in our results. And we also talked about how we're looking for peer-reviewed content as part of sort of like one of those key criteria for the scientific literature that we're looking for. There's also, publication date. And, depending on what kind of science you're looking at, it might be really crucial that it's the last 12 months, right? Or maybe it doesn't matter. It can be, all time. I'm going to say 5 years to give us kind of like a nice middle ground for our search example. But you can also see that, you can put it, select for different languages, you can select for different documents. There's lots of different ways to narrow and expand your searches. For our example here, I'm going to put in a really broad topic, right? And, instead of just saying CRISPR, I'm giving it a little bit more information that I want this aspect of of information about CRISPR. And you could see that as I was typing in like gene and then editing, I'm getting this autocomplete down here. And so when I select this, it's telling the computer, right, or the search that I want these two words together. I want it as a phrase. But I could also put it in quotation marks to make sure that it's not just giving me things that are going to have gene in the title, right? Because that would be a lot. It's like, no, I want gene editing next to each other specifically as a phrase. And that can be important, especially as your search terms maybe include more and more words. You can also see that you would be able to, say you have an author that does research in your topic area and you just want to start searching directly for them. The more that you kind of know about your topic, sometimes the more you can utilize these different filters. Okay, great. So for CRISPR gene editing, in this one particular database, we have 3,368 results, which is kind of a lot, right? But we didn't give the computer too much information to get started. So that's why we have so many, potentially kind of not relevant results. But what's helpful is that when you get a lot of results for this whole page, you automatically are given ways to access the article without even really having to do all the different steps of, clicking on it and scrolling and everything. So, for example, I can just access the PDF and bypass the article kind of completely. And it's going to generate something that I can instantly download, to my computer and save and come back to. And you can see you have the full text, 8 pages. But what I want to focus on up here, this toolbar, I use all the time. So up here, you have the ability to listen to this text, which I think is so helpful. I think a lot of us sometimes absorb information, that's given to us auditorially really well. I can automatically print it. Like I said, I can just download it right to my computer. I can share it, so I can email it. I can email it to myself. I can create a link to it. I can create a project where I kind of like can set up different folders, and I could, potentially add this item to the project that I'm working on. And this is really helpful as well. This is the cite function, which you can see this drop down menu here. We can select for precisely the kind of citation format that we're looking at or that we want for this project. So I'm going to select APA 7th edition, and you can see it automatically generated for us a citation for this article. Anytime anything is automatically generated, you always want to double check it and make sure that it has the different aspects of the citation that you need. But as you start putting your references together, or even at the beginning of your research, it can be really helpful to start collecting your citations. Let's look at one other article, because some of these are going to have access options. And so, for example, if we look at the online full text instead of the PDF, now we have a couple other options, like we can translate this article into different languages, and we have this table of contents, so we can search it a little bit more readily and jump right to the things that maybe we want. So, you know, maybe we want, to know about their funding right away. Maybe you want to know about all these different, like aspects of the article. I also think it's really helpful to jump down to references. Even though it's at the end of the article, sometimes references are a great place to start because they demonstrate for us kind of like the chain of ideas, how this information and these ideas are being passed through the scientific community. And sometimes, researching isn't always just linear forward. Sometimes we're going to go backwards and say, like, where did this information come from? If this article is really helpful to you, maybe you want to check out some of these other articles that might have, similar information. And sometimes that way you kind of end up researching laterally a little bit as well. For one last example, I'm going to show, let's add another aspect to our search. And this layer is going to tell us that we're searching not just for CRISPR gene editing, but as it's related to sickle cell anemia. And keeping all of our other filters the same, we get way fewer results, right? Which means if this is what my topic is, these are going to be 34 highly relevant results. And you can see, they all have the same access options. These are probably 34 results that were present in the other 3,000. But a key part of putting together different search terms and keywords is to kind of almost, narrow down and identify your topic as you go, and clarify kind of like not only what are the like the themes that you're interested in, but what are the relationships to those themes, right? So this is kind of just an overview of Academic Search Complete. As we looked at, we have lots of other databases that might look a little different, like PubChem looks totally different than this. But the idea is kind of the same throughout, is that you're really just kind of here to explore, put yourself in the best position to be within the database or, the publication set that's going to give you the most relevant, most reliable, most credible information. But from within there, it's kind of up to you to decide, which different trial and error aspects you're going to use to try to figure out the best way to get the best information. And you might find that as you search, you totally change what you even thought you were looking for, right? Because you find out what's out there, and how it might be different than what, your expectations were for that topic, or learning stuff that you didn't even know when you developed that initial, topic. So it's a lot like doing science, right? You kind of might start off with a hypothesis, but as you actually do the research and, generate that data, the hypothesis can change, and you can end up researching something that's, that you wouldn't have thought of if you had not done the research process to get there. So thanks for everyone's attention. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. But also, you saw that set of different icons on the library homepage. So there's lots of other different ways to get in touch with me and other librarians for help, and enjoy researching.